Welcome to Tilly's Trans Tuesdays. A key topic I've touched on in many Trans Tuesdays is cis allyship and how important it is to actually making things better for trans people. But some folks who think they're allies aren't. So today we're going to talk about performative allyship. Hi, I'm Tilly Bridges, your host, and I'm joined by my writing partner, my best friend, my wife, our token cis representation, the lady who performed on stage once, but never once with her allyship, Susan Bridges. Our returning guest is Riley Silverman, a writer, comedian, and actress who has written for Doctor Who, Star Wars, and D&D Beyond. She's the head writer for the International Waters podcast and plays as Chase Variant on the comedy role-playing podcast Good Chaotic. Welcome back, Riley.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
Okay, so I love TTRPGs, but I've never been part of one that's an actual play that's like recorded for an audience. And I wanted to know if that changes how you approach the game or how you play it as a character.
A little bit. I think there's definitely a lot more leaning into doing character voices and trying to talk more in character than you would maybe.
Okay.
I feel like some people love to do that at their home games anyway, but some people do a lot more descriptive. And I think that there's more leaning into that. I do think also like when you're GMing or DMing for a show, you do have to think more in terms of building a narrative for like, because you have to do like, hour-long segments or however many you're doing it for a time frame, unless you're Matt Mercer or you're doing an actual 4 or 5 plus 6 hours D&D game for your show. But most of the people, I think there's a lot more of that kind of vibe of like structuring it with arcs and things like that.
How do you do that running a game for a show? Because like I run 2 concurrent Star Trek Adventures games, and it's the old GM thing where like I can plan as much as I want, but the players are never going to do what I expect them to. And so how do you handle that when you have a time frame you have to fit in and you're trying to work an arc into that when you don't know what the players are going to do? Like, do the players try to stick more to whatever the DM's doing rather than go off on wild tangent ideas that they get, or...
It was harder to do it when I was running the Doctor Who game, I think, because when we're doing on Good Chaotic, we don't feel as pressured to wrap up the story in an episode.
Sure.
Like if we get to an hour, we just kind of look for a good cliffhanger moments, and then once we find that, we'll end there. So it's a lot more like keeping a timer going as we play, so we get an idea like when we're getting close to about an hour, so we can find a good cliffhanger. So, and there is a little bit of teamwork involved in finding a good cliffhanger. We usually leave it up to our GM to make the ultimate decision, but like none of us go like that's our cliffhanger, but usually like we kind of like we'll look for a moment to do it.
Yeah.
I will say when I was GMing for the Game of Rassilon, our Doctor Who podcast, it was a lot more the way that I landed on it, the way that I tend to DM anyway if I'm not running a module, if I'm like homebrewing my own story.
Yeah.
I don't prep super deep. I don't have like all the story beats figured out. I kind of just figure out like what would happen if nobody else got involved, right? So like I just kind of know what the plan is, where things are happening, what's going wrong, and then I introduce it to my players, and then I let them figure out what the actual story is, like how they're going to try to, because like everything, if I do it that way, everything is reacting to what they do, and so they're building the story with me. And on Doctor Who, what I did was on Game of Rassilon, because most D&D stories you don't split the party. That's like part of the core of it. But with Doctor Who, like the Doctor and the companions get split up all the time. Like it's a big part of it. So I would basically keep everyone on roughly 5-minute chunks of time. So I would give them a scene. I would run a 5-minute timer. If things were like still pretty hot and like popping when that 5 minutes ran up, I would let it go over and like find a wrap up point. But then I would cut away to another scene and then kind of give people a little bit of a breather to think about what they want to do next and stuff like that. And then come back to them roughly 5 or 10 minutes later, depending on how many people are playing. But that kind of helped me, because then if you do that, it's almost like running a herald in improv, where people start kind of moving into patterns of like, okay, I've had 2 or 3 scenes. Now I know like we've built to this point. Now our arc is coming here. Now I know how to wrap it up. So I think that helped do it a little bit more collectively.
Okay, that makes sense. It also feels like it would be a very different gaming experience than just like hanging out with your friends and just doing it. Like, do you have a preference? Do you prefer to not do it as a show if possible? 'Cause I feel like if I had to do that, it might start to feel like work, and then I don't want my fun to feel like work, you know? I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I don't know if I have a preference, but I do agree that it is different. Like one is more work and one is more hanging out with friends. I do think that Good Chaotic feels a lot more like hanging out with friends and just playing than it does doing a show. Like Doctor Who, I think, especially with Game of Rassilon, because we were doing like self-contained arcs and like each episode was like 1 story or 2 episodes for a story, like that felt like we had to get through done. With Good Chaotic, we tell the story as long as it takes to tell the story, so it does feel a little more like just playing with my friends around a table. But I think I have to have both in order to enjoy it. So I'm happy to do shows for audiences, but I need to be able to do shows that are just me off the table as well. But also right now, like my primary day gig is I run D&D games for kids, like at a club space.
Your posts about that are so cool.
Yeah, and so like that is much more DMing as work than anything else that I do. Like it's very fun. It can be wild and chaotic, and it's very rewarding. But it's a lot more work to keep kids in line while playing games than it is like my friends and adults on a show. So like that is definitely more. But I think that what I will say is nice about doing TTRPG as a show is that one of the hardest aspects of TTRPGs is scheduling. And I do feel like when it's for a show, you do at least get like some period of time where you consistently play.
Yeah. Scheduling is the greatest evil any TTRPG group has ever faced.
Yeah. So I think that's the nice thing about doing it for a show is like I feel like I play way more often if I do D&D for gigs than if I didn't. So
sure. That makes sense. All right. For you, what has been the most surprising thing about your transition?
I don't think I was ever not an empathetic person, but I think that like having gone through the experience of transitioning and like living my like having lived life one way and then like living my life as myself and having to go through that process, I find myself to be a much more empathetic person than I was beforehand. And it's much easier for me to like take a breath and see things from other people's points of view and to like try to like really see things from all sides as opposed to just like getting very tunnel visiony. And I do think that is a huge like response to what I've had to go through as a trans person and like as a trans woman and like being myself and like staking my claim in the world. And like there were things that when I was younger that I didn't understand that were like, you know, big patriarchy and things like that have like instilled in me my whole life. And like, you know, not and like things that even like young women my age also were like, you know, similar ideas to like, you know, there was like a real pushback against feminism for a long time. And then like as I got older, I was like, oh, that was all BS. Like, no, like a lot of that was like, you know, and it was like that kind of thing. And like understanding like listening to people from marginalized experiences and things like that is something that I think I do a much better job of now than I think I did before I transitioned.
Yeah, me too. I love that. And also I think it made me able to be more empathetic because I wasn't drowning in my own misery all the time.
Yes.
It was so hard to see outside of that, you know, to just deal with it all. So yeah, I love that a lot. If you had any advice for somebody just starting their transition, or if there was something you wish you knew ahead of time going in, like what would that be?
I think the biggest thing for me is like not to think of transition as like this one big monolith of an experience, because I think that's what like held me off from it. Like it all just seems so big and untenable. But I think that if you can break it down into smaller, there's like every journey starts with a single step, that platitude. But I think that that's so true with transitioning is there's not really a point where it's all or nothing, and you can kind of take the steps you need. If you think it's something that you are interested in doing, you don't have to decide tomorrow to be in for all of it. You can go to a therapy session or a group meetup. You can make an appointment with a doctor. You can like with me with the LGBT Center in LA, the first thing I had to do was go in for like an economic screening, before I could like do anything else. So like that was a step that I could do, So I think that's a big thing is it's not like tomorrow you wake up and everything in the world is different for you. It is all like steps that you get there, and it's like so you can have the time you need to make peace with what choices you need to make for the process. And there's not like a right or wrong way to do it. I think I don't know how I've talked to you a little bit in person about your journey, and I'm sure you've talked about it a lot on this show. But I know for me, I remember very clearly being like a closeted trans girl in the like 90s and early internet days, and there was like the TS roadmap, and it was very defined, like this is how you have to approach transitioning. And
it was very transmedicalist.
It was. And but like, and at the time that was the only way you could engage with the medical community about it.
It was.
And I think a lot about like women talking about going to try to get hormones, and because they showed up in jeans and like a band t-shirt, they weren't given hormones, and then they showed up in a dress and they were given like that kind of thing. And I remember being actively like early 2000s. Well, actually, it was after I was already on hormones and living openly as myself. I remember I went to an old message board that I used to post on, and I like commented on somebody's post with a kind of a non-transmedicalist point of view, and I was banned from posting because my previous post 10 years ago had been like identifying myself as a cross-dresser or whatever, and they were like, well, you're not a trans woman. Like I remember the same board, like when I was first starting to go, hey, I think that I am actually a trans woman and I want to transition. I remember somebody said to me, somebody in like with their full brain said to me, well, I don't think you're actually a trans woman because you don't want to kill yourself. Like that was literally like it was
hell?
Like because your reaction to your dysphoria is not completely self-harming. Like that's like it was like, but like maybe I was just coping. Like maybe I would like just because I was finding a way to survive and like living a half life doesn't mean that I was okay. And like it was such a wild
It doesn't mean it wasn't
thing.
a problem for you that you needed to fix, or that you were fine. That doesn't mean that you're not trans. It's like there's a million different ways to be trans, and I hate that. Like we did a whole episode on transmedicalism and how people used to have to go through all that, and it's just the most insidious thing that is permeated even now to corners of the present trans community. And I just hate to see it so much, because if we can't be out there supporting each other, who will? You know what I mean? And it's
I always say one of my biggest regrets in transitioning is that I didn't do it 10 years earlier or even earlier than that. But like, I also recognize that the space to do it wasn't what it was 10 years earlier, and it's worse now than it was 5 years ago. So,
it sure is.
So like it goes like, but I definitely own some of it of like, I talked myself out of it, but I also do get frustrated at the way that the community and the medical like requirements like kept me from thinking that I was allowed to. I remember having a moment where I was like, I'm not allowed. I didn't think I was allowed to be trans. Like that was like the weirdest, like I didn't hit this certain criteria, so I'm not allowed to be. And it took me a long time to get over that in my own head. So like I blame myself for it in part ways, and I also blame the messaging that led me to believe that way. So
there's a lot of that insidiousness in society. And if that is something you are going through out there, babes who are listening, check out the episode on Yes, You Are Trans Enough for Trans Day of Visibility, because you are trans if you say you are, and no one else gets to tell you you're not.
Yeah, and that's why my advice is to just take the small step in front of you that solves whatever's in your brain at this moment, and then continue to take those steps. And if you hit a point where you're like, you know what, I don't want to go any further down this road, that is okay. You are still
so cool.
Beautiful. You're still worthy of love. And like, it also doesn't mean that you're not trans. If you still feel, it just means that you're not you don't need this particular treatment for your transness. Like, you know, that is something I think too, is like I know I've only had an orchie, and frequently people have referred to as like, oh, why didn't you get the full surgery, or why didn't you go all the way? And I'm like, I did go all the way for what I needed. Like, I went to what I needed to have done. Like
that's all that matters.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's really good advice. Take it one step at a time and just see how you feel about each one. And anytime that you feel like you don't need to go any further, that's cool. You can stop right there.
There are some steps that might have some more ongoing like medical repercussions, but like just think about it, go into it, but like go in with that information and make the peace that you can make with it. So like, do I wish that it was more possible for me to have procreated before I transitioned? Sure. But at the same time, like for me, I remember it was a big thing of like coming down to the point of like, do I want to store sperm? Do I want to like that kind of thing? And I ended up not, because the cost was so prohibitive. But one of the moments that I had with that thought process was, well, if I really desperately wanted that outcome, the cost wouldn't be prohibitive. It would be enough. You know what I mean? Like if
you would find a way to pay for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also, for me, the way that I made peace with it is like, if I did want to have kids someday, like I really only signed up for the same issue that two cis lesbians would have, of like not being able to, like, I remember like, I don't have any kids, and I've kind of made peace with it of like, if I met a partner who had kids or wanted kids, we would have that conversation and figure out what we could do with it. But like, I never wanted to be a father. So I mean, I would be happy to be a mom, but I didn't want to be a father. So for me, like storing my sperm to like have a kid didn't feel like something I needed to do. But that was a choice that I made for myself, and it might be very different for every other trans person out there. So
yeah, absolutely. And there's many different ways to be a parent to someone, rather that's not just biological. So again, no transmedicalism here.
Absolutely. Or family essentialism. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love found family. Found family is like
found family is the best. Yeah. There's nothing better than finding the people that you love so much that you want them in your life. That is the best thing.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to remind folks one more time where they can find you online after listening?
Sure. I am on Blue Sky at rileysilverman.bisky.social, and then I'm also on Instagram at Riley Silverman.
Perfect. Okay, so this week's topic of performative allyship is entirely entwined with a lot of others. So let me hit you with some foundational stuff that's important if you've not encountered it before. I have mentioned so many times how we trans folks are a small percentage of the population, so much so that we cannot affect societal change on our own. That means that trans rights and trans liberation are paradoxically and unfortunately in the hands of cis people. This is discussed in detail in Trans Politics 1, Stop Tolerating Transphobia, Trans Politics 2, You Must Vote to Protect Us, and those were episodes 88 and 89 of this podcast, and then just last week in the Trans Panic Defense in episode 157. For that matter, Stop Staring at Us, Trans People Are Human Beings in episode 78, and Trans Microaggressions in episode 58 are also a good base to start from to give you an idea of what kind of cis nonsense trans people have to put up with all the time.
It took me a second to realize that was the name of an episode, and I thought you were just saying, for that matter, stop staring at us in all caps.
Stop Staring at Us is the name of the episode.
Yeah, I figured that out once you said the episode.
Okay, yeah. Okay, also listen to episodes 132 and 152 on No Escape from Reminders I'm Trans and No Escape to Some Escape, respectively, for examples on how acts of kindness and compassion from cis people can have a huge impact on trans life. With those as a basis, hopefully you will understand how vital cis allyship is to trans folks. Nothing will ever get better if you, yes, you, don't do something about it. But allyship isn't just saying you don't have a problem with us or you think we should have the same rights as everyone else. You cannot be a real trans ally without action. This means voting for people who will, quote unquote, allow us to exist and not try to legislate us out of existence. This means stepping in if your friends or family dead name or misgender one of us so that we don't have to have that confrontation. It means lifting up and amplifying trans voices and actually listening to what we're saying and believing we know our own existence and experiences better than cis people do. Check out the Fetishization of Trans Women 2 Reactions and Origins at episode 156 of this show for some ways in which we're entirely ignored and intentionally misunderstood when we try to talk about the problems that affect us. Before we get too far into things, I wanted to ask you, Riley, if you have experienced moments of real, true cis allyship that changed things or made a situation better for you.
I mean, definitely yes, but now, like, on the spot, I can't think of any. Like, I will say, here's a good one, and I won't say her name because she is a celebrity now, and I don't know. I'm
Ooh.
sure it's fine, but I definitely had like a situation where I was at a comedy show when I was still doing stand up, and
Yeah.
a person was being like kind of uncomfortable and like following me around in a way that was making me like very like nervous, and this
Yeah.
person just very coolly ran interference and like didn't like make a scene out of it, didn't like do anything, just kind of like distracted the person who was like following me and like talked to them long enough for me to like get in my car and drive away. And it was like such a perfect like way to do it. So that kind of thing was great. I'm trying to think of like situations where specifically like trans elements were coming into play.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I have them, and off the top of my head I can't think of any.
Okay.
I've had
That's all
plenty of
right.
examples of performative stuff where I've had like
Oh,
cis
yeah.
men who escalate fights that don't need to be escalated, and then like it gets turns into an angry shouting match, and then later on they act like they're the heroes for doing that, and it's like, no, that didn't
Sure.
have to go the way that it did.
That wasn't helping.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that. But I mean, absolutely, I have had people who have done very cool things, and obviously I've experienced lots and lots of performative versions of it. But it's honestly like I would say the best like allyship that I get is just the way that a lot of cis women just don't treat me differently than they would their friends, and like bring me into their lives and just like let
Other
me.
cis women. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly. Like I'm one of the best moments I've had with cis women is when like a cis woman forgets that I'm trans to the point where she asks me if I have a tampon, like, and I, as a result of that, I usually do have some in my purse just in case somebody needs one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, to the point where like it took her a second to realize that like that was a funny thing to ask me. So yeah, because it's like that. There's like at that point like has just forgotten to even think of me as somebody different in her brain, which is a great part.
Yeah.
So
It is. That's wonderful when that happens. So what do I mean when I say performative allyship? Well, I am talking about the people who say they are our allies and likely absolutely believe that they are, but who don't actually do what's needed to make that true. There is no follow through. Story time. Okay, it is no secret that I have become somewhat well known for my trans allegory deep dives, all of which began with 24 Trans Tuesday essays that became my book, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix. It is a little weird to be best known for my nonfiction writing when I primarily write fiction, but I'm not mad about it. Anyway, when you live in LA and you work in the entertainment industry, your friends know people who know people who know people, you know? It's a situation where everyone kind of knows everyone to some degree. It's a small world. So a while back, I got a text from a friend who was friends with the producer of a talk show that shall remain unnamed. Said talk show was going to have Keanu Reeves and Carrie Ann Moss on to talk about Matrix Resurrections as part of the promotion for the film. And as part of the segment with the actors, they were going to have audience submitted questions, and my friend very kindly thought of me. To say I was ecstatic was an understatement. I got in touch with the producer, and while I waited for a reply, I spent hours trying to formulate the one question I might get to ask them. I knew nobody else would be asking about the trans allegories of the movies, and I knew Keanu had mentioned that the actors weren't aware of the allegories during the filming of the original trilogy. Here is a quote from him from a link in the show notes. Quote, that idea wasn't introduced to me when we started production on the films. Lily never shared that with me. End quote. This was before Resurrections had been released, so I couldn't ask anything about the newest film in the series. I had not seen it yet. So I decided that I would ask them about the original trilogy because I had no interest in pandering what was it like to return to the characters after so long type of questions that hundreds of other people would be asking them. So while I was still trying to work out what to ask, the producer got back to me. She was so excited to be in touch with a trans person who was a fan because she'd heard something or other about a trans allegory and thought it was important to get our perspective on things. And for the biggest mass media made by and about trans people, yes, it is important to get our perspective on things. Never mind that I am but one trans person, and I don't and shouldn't have to speak for the entire community. Ideally, they'd have had questions from multiple trans people, but apparently they were shooting the interview tomorrow, and I was going to be the sum total of all trans people who got this amazing opportunity. Oh, great, no press. Not at all. I completely missed the warning signs at the time due to my excitement at the opportunity, but they seem clear as day to me now. If she was so excited to talk to trans people about a Matrix film, why hadn't they intentionally sought any out? Why didn't they get questions from many of us? Why was I the only one getting this opportunity, and it was because she was a friend of a friend? In hindsight, what happened next should not have been a surprise. She told me I'd have to sign a release. No problem, that's standard Hollywood operating procedure. I told her I was still thinking over what my question would be since it was so important to me, but I would have it soon. She was thrilled. A few hours later, after writing and rewriting my question over and over to be sure it was worded exactly right for what may be my one and only chance to ask these two artists who are part of something so important to me about the art that's meant so much to so many, it was ready. I don't have the exact wording of the question anymore, but it asked about how they thought their performances in the original trilogy would have changed if they'd been aware that Trinity was Neo's self actualization and they were playing two aspects of the same person. This is, famously, what my entire book is about as the whole franchise tracks one person's transition journey. In fact, here is a quote from the very lovely Lily Wachowski from a link in the show notes. Quote, so when I look back at the way we cast those two parts, I can see how obvious it is that they're one part in a lot of ways, that they're two sides of the same coin. It's not like there were conscious decisions, but more like we're finding our way instinctively as these two closeted trans women. End quote. I mean, there is a still from the teaser for Matrix Resurrections that made me scream when I first saw it that you can see in the text version of this essay at
Tilly'sTransFuseDate.com.
yeah, it is right there. It is a shot that is half Trinity's face, half Neo's face, split vertically down the middle. Tilly, why don't you still have the text of your question? I hear you ask. Tilly, why not just link us to the video of them answering the question? I hear you cry. I'd write better dialogue for you, but I am tired and need more coffee. So them's the breaks. The reason I don't still have the text of this question is because my question was never asked. Because when I sent my question to the producer, only then did she tell me it had to be submitted as a video of me asking the question myself. And if you're wondering why that was an issue, let me direct you to the episodes on gender dysphoria, episode 59, photos and reflections, episode 91, and voice, episodes 45 to 47. Where I am at in my transition now, reflections and photos and my voice and videos are all great. You may have surmised this from how many selfies I post on the social media. Sorry, not sorry. Listen to episode 92 of this show on Photos to the Selfie Apocalypse for more. I didn't get to see myself for my entire life, but now I do. So yeah, that tracks. It's common for a lot of trans people. Let us have this. But at the time, it was the winter of 2020, and I'd only been socially and medically transitioning for 5 months. Photos were still largely awful, my voice was a dysphoric nightmare, and seeing myself moving and speaking in video was just torturous. I could barely handle doing Zoom calls with friends who I was already comfortable with by knowing they weren't being recorded and just never ever looking at the video from my own camera. So here is this producer asking me to do a video, already very painful for me, for people I didn't know, to show to artists I cared a lot about, and to be seen by the entire national and global audience of the show, recorded for all time. And I just couldn't. There was no way. At that time, if I'd had a month to shoot it and reshoot it again and again as much as needed to get something I could somehow live with, then maybe. But that is a very big maybe, and the process would be so painful, I'm honestly not sure I could have gotten a usable one. There was no way I could do this in less than a day, if I could even do it at all. I explained all of this to the producer and asked if it would be possible to have someone else read the question out for me. They could and should please still attribute it to me. All I asked was for someone else to be the one to ask it on video due to my dysphoria. I explained the entire situation to her and tried to convey how painful and impossible it would be for me to do it in the allotted time. She refused. She said she understood I was quote unquote camera shy and thanks anyway, and that was it. In the span of a few hours, I went from having an amazing opportunity that I will likely never get again, and a producer who said she wanted trans perspectives but would not even do the easiest damn thing to get said perspective, all snatched away. I cannot even tell you how livid I was at her equating gender dysphoria to being camera shy. Just writing about it here, my blood was boiling. Do not do this. Dysphoria is real and painful and awful, and it is not about being damned camera shy. Oh, okay. You talked a little bit about these already, Riley, but are there other instances of performative allyship where someone just wanted to think of themselves as a good person but wouldn't do the smallest, easiest thing to help you?
I remember one time there was this like meeting of like women in comedy. They were having like a women in comedy summit at the, like, somebody was putting it on in the space that used to be the UCB theater on Sunset in their inner sanctum, which is like a big coffee shop theater space. And I was looking through all the list of people they had on it, and there wasn't a single trans woman on the lineup or the list or anything. And I kind of reached out, and I was just kind of like, why is this the case? Like, why do you think trans women don't have any voices at the table for what it's like to be a woman in comedy? And they're like, well, we reached out to the LGBT Center and we tried to get some suggestions for trans stand-up comics, and they didn't give us any. And I'm like, that's the extent of your search? Like, you went to a non-comedy space and you asked a place that didn't have, at the time, like, the center didn't have the big space now that's over on Santa Monica Boulevard, like the McCadden place. That didn't exist yet. There wasn't like this huge trans arts community within the center. It was just a medical facility. Like, they basically reached out to a doctor's office to ask if they knew a list of trans comedians. And when they didn't get an answer, they gave up their search, which made me think,
you have the internet. You have the internet. It is not hard to do a search for trans women comedians. They're everywhere.
You are literally talking to other women in the LA comedy scene about doing this show. All you have to do is say, and do you know any trans people? Because they did. Yeah. There was several of us in various Facebook like women's comedy groups that could have been the people to talk to about it. So the fact that like they were like, no, we tried one source and we didn't find it. Like, it was such a, like, you didn't ever actually care if our voices were at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had a few experiences like this one you just described too, where someone made a point of like, oh, I'm so excited to have a trans person here, but only in my very specific criteria, and if anything is out. I remember I was asked by a friend to do this thing for a group of memoir writers, and it was about writing memoir or writing nonfiction that included trans people, and like how to be more sensitive in their inclusions and stuff like that. And then I was in the like preliminary meeting with somebody, and there was like me and an older trans woman, so a very different generation, the very transmedicalist like we were talking about,
right?
And her partner, or I think a memoirist she'd worked with, I think is what it was. And like in this conversation, the cis memoirist was talking about a non-binary person who would like help them with something and misgendered them immediately in the conversation. And I was just kind of like, hey, you know, we're talking about sensitive portrayals and things like that, and you can't be bothered to gender this person correctly. And then like it like spiraled from there until eventually like I was disinvited from this meeting. But they like presented it like they were doing me a favor. They were like, you know, a lot of these people have some old school ideas and you might just find it a little bit too triggering and discomforting. And I'm just like, oh, what you're afraid of is that I'm going to point out when people are being transphobic at this conversation that's supposed to be how to be less transphobic in your writing.
Yikes.
And also it was supposed to be a paid gig, and they like slowly like were like, no, we were never going to offer any money. I'm like, oh, that's interesting that this was a paid, it was definitely a paid. I talked to my friend who had put me up for it, and she's like, no, it was definitely supposed to be a paid gig. They're trying to weasel out of it at this point. So it was a whole thing. And I've had a few those kinds of things, but
any of those points, if you had, they would vehemently deny that they were being transphobic. No, I'm a great ally. I care. I care about trans people. I'm not transphobic. That's the part that gets me so much. It's like if you can't even see it in yourself, you can never actually be better. You don't get to call yourself an ally if you're not doing anything. You know, it's an action. It's a verb. You have to do something to help, or you're not actually a friend of ours. It seems so basic to me.
It's the same thing as this camera shy comment where it's like, oh, I'm going to make it on you. It's your fault that I wasn't able to be a better ally for you. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're too camera shy. You might get triggered. I'm like, I'm not triggered. I'm telling you what's happening. Like I'm pointing, if anything, I triggered you by pointing out that you were being transphobic. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a nightmare. Yeah. And it happens, I mean, performative allyship happens with all kinds of allies to all marginalized communities. And it's awful. And, you know, like I am very, very, very white, and I do my very best to actually not be a performative ally to people of color, to Black people. I want to be an actual ally. I want to back up that with actions. I don't get to say whether or not I am an ally to them. That is for them to say, right? It's for the marginalized
100%.
community to decide if you are an ally to them or not. We don't get to call ourselves that. And I think examining that about yourself and knowing that it has to be more than just words and that you need to listen to them if they tell you you're not being helpful, like that's the first step to any kind of actual allyship. You have to listen to the people you're trying to help and believe what they tell you.
Yeah. I almost always distrust people who tell me they're an ally.
Yeah.
Like show me your allyship. Like don't tell me
Yeah.
you're an ally. Like show up for it.
Yeah.
Like it's like there are like I the exception in this case, for example, like my roommates that like I'm living at their house right now, they're helping me like not have to move to like transphobic state because my finances got screwed up. Like that's
Yeah.
showing up. Like so there's a good example from earlier when I was like, what is like true allyship is like these people like allowed me to move into their home when like my finances took a huge hit, you know? So like that's somebody who showed up for me because they understood that if I moved back to my home state, I might be in danger, you know? So that's like
Yeah.
true allyship. So, and also like they have trans people in their family, like their blood relatives or their relatives through marriage are trans and like they
Yeah.
show up in ways that are beautiful and sublime and wonderful. And so like I will never question their choice to wear like a pin that says they're an ally and stuff like that because like they will walk the walk and they wear their pin to show people around them like I will not tolerate your behavior if it's bad around me, and that's always wonderful and great. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, I love that you said people like introducing themselves as allies. It is like the
Yeah.
biggest red flag. Oh, you're trans. I'm such an ally. No, shut up. No,
Yeah.
no, no. If you were a real ally, you wouldn't need to say that and have me validate what a good person you are. You would just be out there doing the right thing. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
I remember back in the day, I used to get in far too many arguments on Facebook with people who had bad
Oh,
ideas about themselves in the
yeah.
world. I'm glad that I don't do that as much anymore. I still once in a while get caught up in it, but I'm better than I used to be. But I remember like getting into an argument with somebody at one point. This is way back in the early days of arguing about trans bathroom rights and stuff like that. And this woman like she just like dug her heels so deeply into the position of I'm a good person. And
Yep.
I think that there is something about that and like I'm an ally, I'm a good person, where once a person has convinced themselves that they are a really good person and a really good ally, like now like they care more about seeing themselves that way than they
Right.
do about actually doing the things that you have to do to be quote unquote a good ally. Like I think about it a lot with like Doctor Who of like there was I often say Doctor Who changed how I view the whole world and like how like it made me a better person because like there's the great like moment of like the doctor saying like am I a good man? I don't know if I am or not, but I try to be and that's what matters. And like the idea is like you don't define yourself as a good person. You do things that you think a good person would do, and you
Right.
continue to do them, and that's what you should be doing. Don't think of yourself as a good. I feel like once you have decided I'm a good ally, I'm a good person, and that's like where you're defining yourself. Like I think that's the like road to destruction because now you're going to recontextualize everything you're doing into the framework of no, I already know that I'm a good person. But like
Yeah.
if you don't consider yourself as like a default objective absolute good person and you just try to think about like what are the good things that I can do, that's going to make you do the things that make you a good person, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
See Inside Out 2 for more similar thought processes.
Yeah. You also have to realize that we're all flawed. We're all flawed. Every human has flaws because we're human. And it doesn't mean that you are a bad person, but it means maybe you weren't as good of a person as you could have been. And it's always important to think about these things and examine our own thoughts and actions to ensure that we are being, the kind of people we want to be. And if that's a person that wants to be an ally to any marginalized community, listen to them and do the things that they ask and that they need for you to help them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this producer that I dealt with said she supported trans people. She said our voices were important to her. She said she wanted to be sure we were included, but she would not do a single easy thing to actually make it happen. And if this pisses you off, know that it gets even worse when a supposed quote unquote ally does the work of our oppressors without even realizing. Check out episode 8 on Performative Allyship 2, False Allyship, to see how it can all go south really quickly. And then listen to Proactive Allyship, Be an Accomplice, in episode 35 for what putting your allyship into practice actually looks like. You can say you support us all you want. You can say you stand with us and say all the legislation against us is wrong. You can even pat yourself on the back for doing so. But if you don't back it up with action, that is not allyship. When the entire world is coming for us, people who claim to be our friends but do nothing at all to actually help us is the last thing that we need.
And I was thinking about it too, like the number of people who like swear that they are allies but can't even be bothered to like not engage with Harry Potter. You know, it's like
right?
They can't even like do the simplest thing
to
not do. And like to still to this day will try to be like, well, I don't even know what she said that was that bad. Like, well, all the transphobic stuff. That's what she's like. I don't know how you can still make those cases when she's smoking cigars and drinking cocktails on a boat, going, haha, trans people lost their rights. Like,
because I funded that to happen with my billions of dollars that I make from Harry Potter. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But is she really bad? I mean, and you're just like, oh my God.
She's literally Lex Luthor at this point, and it's like
she is
fine. So it's like, yeah, it's like you can't even. It's like not even are you doing the things that like you stand with all. What was the word? The thing you just said about actually working as accomplices to the enemy as opposed to our side of it, and that kind of thing. And it's just it's so wild how easy it is. And we talked about it a little bit on the last episode about like the way that some people perform their allyship that somehow marginalizes us more. Like we talked about like the way that like there is this kind of mentality of don't use like try to use they them pronouns if you don't know somebody's pronouns. And like I 100% get the like mentality behind that, and I think like and there are a lot of cases where it's a good example of what to do, but there's also like the number of times people who I've like been interacting with for a while will ask me my pronouns, but they have not asked anybody else in the scenario their pronouns. Like they've gone out of their way to do it, and like that can be so frustrating. Or like the number of times that like someone will they them me consistently despite the fact that those are not my pronouns and not how I identify. It's like that kind of stuff is like going out of their way to there's like this weird backhanded allyship where it's like if you get upset with them for it, then they're like, but I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to do. I'm they theming you, and like that's not the thing you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use my pronouns. Like, yeah.
It's almost like we're all different people.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Riley.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Cis folks, if you don't actually help us, you are not an ally. It is not about your words or your labels or you feeling good about yourself. It is about action. It is about doing the right thing. If you can't, you are not an ally and certainly don't get to call yourself one. Do better or get out of the way. Tilly Bridges, end transmission. Tilly's Trans Tuesdays is hosted by Tilly Bridges and Susan Bridges with audio editing and sound mixing by Jillian Morgan. The written essay version of this week's topic and all past topics is available at tillystranstuesdays.com. Special thanks to Daisy and Jane for the use of Sorry Not Sorry as our show's theme music. Please stop by and show your support at daisyandjane.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/daisyandjane. You can find me at Tilly Bridges on Blue Sky, on Mastodon at Tilly Bridges and Mastodon.social, and on Insta at Heck Yeah Tilly Bridges. And you can find Susan on those at Susan L. Bridges. You can find Jillian at Audio Jillian on Blue Sky. You can join the Tillyverse Discord server by following the link at the very bottom of tillystranstuesdays.com. We hold regular watch parties for the Matrix films and other trans movies, where I do a live Q&A, and it's blossomed into a wonderfully supportive, compassionate, kind community of friends. We love to have you join us. If you'd like to keep up with all the writing that Susan and I do, you can sign up for our newsletter at birdguestbroadcast.com. Signed copies of our comics and my book, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix, are available on my coffee shop at ko-fi.com/tillybridges. If you're listening on YouTube, it's so cliche, but please like and subscribe and take a few seconds to leave a comment. Those feed the algorithm and helps the show be found by so many more people. If you're listening on other platforms, ratings and reviews help just as much, and I'd certainly appreciate them. Thank you for your support. For more information, visit pendantaudio.com. Thanks for listening.
Zoom just put my hand up. Like, be a better ally, Zoom. Sometimes I gesticulate when I talk.